For Creamer Media's Polity, I'm Shannon Derehove. I'm at the ISS in Pretoria to meet with researcher Hamatsaripi Tamukamoyo about the problems associated with close ties between business people and politicians. Recently, South African President Jacob Zuma was accused of blatantly promoting corruption in South Africa, saying business would multiply if business owners supported the ANC. What do you think President Zuma meant by this statement?
Well, thanks, Shannon. I think we need to put this in context. This was said by President Zuma at a gala to raise money for the ANC. The gala raised 21.1 million rand, something in that region. And President Zuma said at that gala that it's fine to support the ANC, but he also said that if you invest in the ANC, your business will multiply. I think this is a contradiction for any sensible business. For example, I think you'd rather invest in marketing, you'd rather invest in better technology, in better skills. So we need to say that when the ANC, which is in control of the state, when the leader of that party says, if you're a businessman and you invest, essentially give money to the ANC, or when you pay 450,000 rand to sit at a table next to the president of the party, that is investing in the ANC. Your business will multiply. And I think, according to legislation, that is essentially the definition of corruption. That is corruption. That is when business people pay to get access to the ANC, and then in return, the ANC ensures that state resources in the form of tenders, they are diverted towards those business people. That is essentially what the president means, I would think. And I think it raised alarm bells. It rightly raised alarm bells in the opposition, among legal experts, and also among activists. That to say the president seems to be blatantly supporting corruption in the country.
You state in your article that the Edison Power contract, where politically connected individuals were awarded a lucrative contract, and the heavily sponsored New Age business breakfasts appear to be a continuation of Zuma's approach to business. What do you mean by this?
There are two issues. We have Edison Power, which is owned by Vivian Reddy, who has a history of investing, so to speak, in the ANC, and also he has a history of giving money to the president. I think when Shabir Shaik could no longer give the President Zuma money for his Nkandla homestead, there are reports in the media that suggest that Vivian Reddy stepped in. Then you got recently a 1.2 billion rand contract to supply smart electricity meters to the city of Johannesburg. The evidence that is there seems to suggest that Edison Power was one, not the cheapest contractor. Two, it does not have any history of doing business in this kind of area. Three, it will not source the components for these meters locally, and in the process promote local business. So that is one set of issues. And then the second set of issues concerns the Gupta family and the New Age newspaper. The evidence that is there seems to suggest, and it raises questions also as to whether the New Age newspaper would survive without support from government parastatals, would survive without some of the breakfasts that has been conducting. And you know, participants who attend these breakfasts actually pay to attend those breakfasts, and then you've got parastatals coming in with millions of rand in terms of subsidies to the New Age newspaper. I think those are the two issues. The reason I'm saying it's a continuation of this is because during the Shabir Shaik trial, the evidence that emerged seems to suggest that Shabir Shaik was giving money to the president. He was not president of the country then, and neither was the president of the ANC, but he was giving money to Jacob Zuma. And in return, then Deputy President Jacob Zuma was using his influence to ensure that Shabir Shaik's business would prosper. We remember the reports that emerged that on a trip to London to do with the French arms deal, Thomson Think, for instance, President Zuma enabled Shaik to get a stake in a company that was doing business with this consortium. So that is a continuation. So we come from Shabir Shaik, and then we continue with Vivian Reddy and Edison Power. We continue with the Guptas and their New Age newspaper. And I think that is a continuation of that, to say it seems that if you give money to people in power in the ANC, your business will prosper.
What, in your view, are the main consequences of corrupt practices and actions for the country?
Well, I think essentially that there are two very strong sets of issues. one is service delivery. There are very negative ramifications for service delivery. The Treasury, for example, reports that some 25 to 30 billion rand is lost in the government procurement budget because of corruption. So what could that money be used? For instance, it could be used to improve the quality of education. That is a service to the people of South Africa. And I think from the recent debacle in the Limpopo province, we know that there are a lot of issues to do with education. It could, for instance, improve housing for the poor. It could improve water and sanitation for the poor. It would also improve the justice system, which also is for the poor, because the poor cannot access the justice system. So the one thing is that service delivery in South Africa is simply being hampered by the fact that there are corrupt practices that are occurring. Then the other issue is really a breakdown of trust between government and the people of South Africa. So when we see politicians driving around in Mercs and BMWs and high-end Audis, and then at the same time they are professing to care about the people of South Africa, I think there is a disjuncture there. And then when government or when politicians then come out to the people of South Africa and they promise them education, they promise them water, they promise them all sorts of services, the people of South Africa simply do not trust those politicians. And as a result, we see wildcat strikes. For example, we saw those in the mining sector. We see the sort of upheavals we saw in Sasolburg. Those are service delivery issues. We see the sort of things that are happening on the Western Cape farmlands, because people simply do not trust what government says. So there is a breakdown of trust, and as a result, what we now see, it's hitting the rand, it's hitting in the investor confidence in South Africa, and we also saw the credit downgrades. The reality is that the economy is slowing down. So I think the ripple effect in the long term is that it impacts the economy. But I think essentially service delivery is being affected, and there's a breakdown of trust between government and the people of South Africa.
How do you think that effective opposition can be built to defeat corruption and corrupt practices?
We need to be clear to say that we have a constitution in South Africa. We've got anti-corruption legislation. It is the people who commit corruption. It is the people who are engaging in corrupt practices who are anti the constitution, who are anti-legislation. So I think we need to be very clear that the people of South Africa, they want a better life for themselves and their children. I think going into the future, we essentially need very strong legislation, and we need the government to show that to the people of South Africa that indeed there is political will on the part of the state to fight corruption. Yes, the ANC comes out and says no. Every time there's a meeting, there's a gathering, a political gathering, they'll come out and say, well, we are anti-corruption. They'll say all sorts of very nice things that the people of South Africa want to hear. But when it comes to action, you find that the ANC elects people who have got allegations of corruption hanging over them. They elect these people to the higher echelons of the party, and essentially to the higher echelons of government. And then they protect those people to ensure that they do not go to jail, or charges are just mysteriously quashed, or they employ people within key criminal justice institutions who are malleable, so as to ensure that those politicians, those officials are not charged. So we need political will in the country to fight corruption. And also, I think we need to develop a very strong whistleblowing ethic in South Africa to say that there is nothing wrong with reporting officials, with reporting companies, with reporting businesses to the agencies that are responsible for that. I don't think we need new legislation. We've got 11 agencies in South Africa, 11 agencies that have got a mandate in some way or another to fight corruption. We also have got 5 coordinating mechanisms to combat corruption. So we do not have a shortage of legislation. I don't think we need to go through a raft of new legislation, but we need commitment on the part of those in power the political will, commitment through action, not just words, commitment through action to fight corruption. And this means that they need to put in, to ensure that the legislation is followed. It means that there is enough capacity in terms of human resources to ensure that the work is done. And those who have got corruption allegations hanging over them, if there is evidence, that evidence needs to be tested before a court of law. And if indeed they're guilty, then the law should take its course.
Why do you argue that corrupt practices contradict the popular political slogan, a better life for all?
We know in the 2012 Transparency International Index, South Africa is somewhere at number 69, and that's a very bad score in terms of perceptions of corruption. And we also know from some of the victims of crime surveys that there is people seem to perceive that corruption also crime is a big issue in South Africa. And I think that when you have a country, or when you've got a country that is lurching from crisis to crisis in terms of allegations of corruption against those people who are supposed to be leading the country, I think that is an issue. And then also when you've got politicians who are helping themselves to state resources, and then at the same time they're saying we want a better life for South Africans, I think there is a contradiction. And I think that when we've got politicians at galas, for instance, then they call for business to invest in the ANC, and you've got businesses paying the sort of money I've been talking to you about. And also we've got businesses, private individuals spending millions on portraits of former ANC leaders and current ANC leaders. I don't think that probably those spendings, maybe they're worth a few thousand, but then they pay millions of dollars to the tune of 3.5 million rand. For me, that is access to the state. That is access to the ANC. Now put that against very poor people who do not have that kind of access, who do not have money, but they have concerns. So if you are a poor person, what do? Maybe you write a letter to the local councillor, or you write a letter to the minister. Of course, they ignore it. But if you are a wealthy business person, you pay for a table. Then you sit next to the minister and you tell the minister your problem. So I think that what we are seeing is a better life. At least the evidence before us seems to suggest a better life for politicians, and not so much of a better life for poor people who cannot access politicians in government, poor people who do not have resources to access those. So it essentially means that if you are poor, your concerns that you have, they're actually put on the back burner. And there's those concerns of already wealthy people. Those are the concerns that are put in front of the agenda. And I think into the future, there needs to be a dispensation that indeed puts flesh to what the Constitution of South Africa calls us to do. And that is a better life for all those who live in South Africa. That is just, that is fair, that is equitable.
That was ISS researcher Hamatsarepe Tamuka Moyo discussing the close ties between business people and politicians.